After the release of my Bowie Black Star film, many more clues and synchronicities have made themselves apparent to me. It was impossible to cover everything in that short film that I found, and one could easily make a much longer film detailing all the symbols and high weirdness. In the Bowie Black Star film, I discussed the Kubrick and Christopher Nolan connections, and it led me towards another train of thought based on other pieces of information I've come across in the past. In the last film, we discussed the Black Monolith, featured in the work of Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke. Contrary to the commonly held belief, Stanley Kubrick did not adopt 2001: A Space Odyssey from a pre-existing novel. In fact, it was the other way around. The story from 2001 was already conceptualized and being put in motion when Clarke was approached to write the novelization because they wanted an established sci-fi writer associated with the story. Yet to this day, many writers and film websites wrongly attribute this film as an adaptation of a book and not the other way around. And it appears this was done with intent. Kubrick wanted to make a sci-fi film before he even hooked up with Clarke. He based his original ideas for 2001 upon a handful of short stories written by Clarke, in particular The Sentinel. Kubrick then hired Clarke to work on the film story with him, but the book was written as the film was being made. Clarke was allowed to view rushes of what had been filmed, and based many of the book's details upon what he believed Kubrick's footage was conveying. Kubrick had creative control over the book, and so was at liberty to instruct Clarke on how the book should be written. Quite simply, Kubrick was the primary creative force, and Clarke was the writer for hire. The story was always the same with Kubrick's collaboration with writers. He would adapt an already written novel for the screen in conjunction with the original writer, or in some cases, he would simply buy the rights to the story, then exclude the original writer altogether, while he brought in a third writer to help him revise the story until it was virtually unrecognizable from the original text. This is also the exact thing Kubrick would again use later with The Shining, creating a new work almost entirely different from the original. This allows Kubrick to then use the films as vehicles for telling what appear to be real stories using the framework of fiction. And when you watch through Kubrick's entire film catalog, you can see that every film he ever made was done using this method. If Stanley Kubrick faked the Apollo 11 mission, and the creation of 2001 was a cover for the development of the technology needed to do so, was the content of the film also a fictionalized telling of actual events involving the moon and a secret mission? The film makes it clear that the public is being given a cover story to hide the existence of the alien monolith on the moon to keep the citizens from going into a mass panic. It's my opinion, based on my years of studying this topic, that the public moon mission was a front for a secret mission, and that Kubrick's filmed version was sold as the cover story. This has been hinted about in other films such as Transformers: The Dark of the Moon, in which the moon mission is a front for the astronauts to investigate an alien presence on the moon. One of the things that is not mentioned in 2001: A Space Odyssey is exactly where the monolith is found on the moon. In the sequel, 2010, The Year We Make Contact, also written by Arthur C. Clarke, the location of the monolith's discovery is revealed to be the Sea of Tranquility, the exact place where the Apollo 11 mission is alleged to have landed. One can't help but feel that this was left out intentionally in 2001, since the public had no idea in 1968, when 2001 was released, exactly where the Apollo 11 mission would land. And then, of course, a year later, the supposed real-life moon landing happened in the exact same spot on the Sea of Tranquility. Director Christopher Nolan has stated that 2010, The Year We Make Contact, was also an influence for his film Interstellar, with actor John Lithgow appearing in both films. Going back and rewatching the film after making the Black Star video, it was interesting to again see the same themes of death and resurrection being used, with the monolith replicating itself and turning Jupiter into a black sun called Lucifer. and seeding new life forms on Europa, which the monolith terraforms using David Bowman and the HAL 9000 computer to do so. I began to wonder if the monolith might also be a real object, and that yet again it's something that has been fictionalized as a cover story for the real thing. Exactly 1 week to the day after the release of my Bowie Black Star film, on January 25th, the Fox network debuted its second episode of its new 6-episode X-Files series. More than any other show in the history of television, the X-Files has taken factual information and fictionalized it for use in its shows. And the relationship between the CIA and show creator Chris Carter is well documented. In this episode, a mysterious high-pitched frequency, exactly like that which the monolith in 2001 emits, is featured in the story. Then, in a dream sequence, in which Mulder envisioned spending time with the son that he and Scully had given up in the original series, we see Mulder and the child William watching the film 2001. And we see the monolith as Mulder explains to William what it is. Then they cut to an outside scene where Mulder and William are seen launching a replica model of the Apollo 11 launch vehicle while quoting JFK's speech on the moon mission. Any thoughts of coincidence or mere synchronicity that may have lingered after the Black Star video were gone. But the fun wasn't over yet. Immediately following The X-Files, Fox premiered a new show called Lucifer, based on the comics written by former Scientologist Neil Gaiman. 3 minutes into the show, they played the song Fame by David Bowie, and the opening scenes take place in Hollywood near the Capitol Records building, which is only 2 miles away from Scientology's massive headquarters. Considering that both of these shows were filmed way ahead of the death of David Bowie, it appears that this was indeed a heavily orchestrated event planned out well in advance. This is also expressed in the words of Bowie's own producer, Tony Visconti, who produced both Space Oddity and Black Star for Bowie. Visconti stated that the events surrounding his death had been planned for at least a year in advance. In the previous Bowie film, we discussed the lyrics from 2 songs that appear on Bowie's 1971 album, Hunky Dory. And there is yet another song from that record with more clues, the song Life on Mars. You can pause the video here to look up the lyrics if you like. The lyrics describe films being watched on a movie screen that the characters in the song are bored with because they mirror actual events in their own lives. This seems to be a distraction from bigger issues and questions of life which are reflected in the words, "Is there life on Mars?" interspersed through the song. Many writers and researchers have pointed out that Kubrick intended the actual movie screen to represent the monolith itself. And this is backed up by Kubrick's own words and anger over altered versions of the film which don't show this idea. Kubrick's vision of the black movie screen representing the monolith itself furthers the notion that the monolith is not just a fictional object, but one that actually exists. And the lyrics from Life on Mars certainly seem to indicate that Bowie was also very aware of this. But where does Mars play into all this, since it wasn't featured in Kubrick's film or in Christopher Nolan's Interstellar? The answer is truly stranger than fiction. Listen to what astronaut and Freemason Buzz Aldrin, supposedly the second man to walk on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission, said during a 2009 interview on C-SPAN.
Habitation on the moon. We can visit other people with their habitation. We can keep track. If there's something very important to be developed from the moon, I'm not sure what it is right now. And I sure think we should identify what it is for America to make such gross expenditures again for human habitation on the moon. We can help. We can join with. Together we can explore the moon and develop the moon. We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? Well, the universe put it there. If you choose, God put it there. Maybe.
Aldrin has never again spoken about this issue publicly, as it seems this revelation might have been a slip on his part. And it's made all the more interesting that he mentions it being put there by someone. Is there life on Mars indeed, eh, Buzz? This object has become known as the Phobos monolith. Although the general public did not find out about this monolith until modern satellites beamed back images, there is evidence that shows knowledge of something strange with Phobos by the American government and others as early as 1960, which means that Kubrick very well could have been informed by NASA as to its actual existence before producing 2001: A Space Odyssey. This news report from March 1960 states, Mars may have orbiting space base, says White House advisor. March 1960. The Martian moon Phobos, generally accepted as a celestial body, actually may be an artificial satellite launched long ago by an advanced Martian race. According to Dr. S. Fred Singer, special advisor to President Eisenhower on space developments. In his published opinion, Dr. Singer backed a claim first made by the Soviet astrophysicist Shklovsky. The Russian scientist's announcement that Phobos was a hollow artificial satellite, proving the existence of a Martian civilization, set off heated arguments among astronomers. Shklovsky based his decision on a long study of Phobos' peculiar orbit, which other astronomers have noted. The Russian claims his calculations and those of earlier astronomers prove Phobos cannot possibly be an ordinary moon. Though Dr. Singer said the figures still had to be proved, his Phobos statement in the February Journal of Astronautics rejected other astronomers' objections. If the figures were correct, he stated, then Phobos undoubtedly is a hollow artificial satellite. If it is, he said, its purpose would probably be to sweep up radiation in the Mars atmosphere so that Martians could safely operate around their planet. Dr. Singer also pointed out that Phobos would make an ideal space base both for Martians and Earthlings. In 1963, Raymond H. Wilson Jr., Chief of Applied Mathematics at NASA, joined the Russian scientist and Dr. Singer in their Martian conclusions. He stated, quote, that Phobos might be a colossal base orbiting Mars. He also stated that NASA itself was considering the possibility and was planning special probes that would answer the question. The Russian doctor based his conclusion on calculations that had been done by the U.S. Naval Observatory, rumored in the 1980s to have been home to the elusive MJ-12 group. Shklovsky stated Phobos was being slowed by electromagnetic drag and tidal friction more than was possible by an actual solid moon. In 1966, astronomer Carl Sagan argued that Phobos could be an artificial satellite of Mars, just like the moon of planet Earth, and that this little Martian moon, just like Earth's moon, is hollow inside. Renowned scientist Dr. Isaac Asimov wrote a story where he suggested that Phobos was an abandoned alien ship from the distant past that was captured by the gravity of the red planet. Another monolith, this time on Mars itself, was discovered by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and of course, just like the Phobos monolith, it was dismissed as a natural formation. This is the exact same technique used again and again on unexplained formations found all over the Earth, like the rock wall, which I cover in my Lost Secrets of Ancient America films. Every American president since Bush Sr. has said that a manned Mars mission should be a priority. But why? The general public is currently again being bombarded with manned Mars mission stuff, but never given a real clear explanation as to why it's so important. NASA has held an almost countless amount of press conferences and announcements of the discovery of water on Mars, each time acting as if it's some kind of new discovery. They did this yet again in September 2015, announcing a major discovery, and of course, it turned out to be nothing but the old recycled "we found water on Mars" bit again. only this time it had more than one purpose. The entire announcement was timed to coincide with the release of the film The Martian, starring Matt Damon and directed by Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott is widely rumored to be a Freemason. The following is taken from an article titled, "Ridley Scott Confirms NASA Timed Mars Water Find to Boost Damon's Martian Movie." On one level, The Martian may be functioning as a giant advertisement for NASA, but the close collaboration between the space agency and Ridley Scott's filmmaking team has resulted in the director remaining blasé about the dramatic announcement of evidence of flowing water on Mars. "I knew that months ago," he said in response to the news. Scott said he had seen photographs of the water flows about 2 months ago, meaning that it was too late to incorporate the revelation into the film's narrative. NASA was given script approval on the film, meaning they got final say on its content, and Ridley Scott, in turn, seems to have been given insider information. The film is nothing more than a rehash of Robinson Crusoe, only this time set in space, and of course, NASA is made to look like the against-all-odds hero. Clearly, this film was made to further impress on the minds of the public that a manned mission to Mars, dangerous as it may be, is a necessary and important effort, and that NASA is an important and valuable organization. Matt Damon also appears in Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, though his appearance is uncredited in the film, and it was never announced he would appear in the film, with audiences not finding out until watching the movie. Nolan claims this was done because he wanted the Dr. Mann character to be someone audiences would trust, since they have become accustomed to rooting for Damon as the hero in other films. In The Martian, Matt Damon plays the marooned astronaut, who is in the exact scenario that Tom Hanks' character in the movie Castaway plays. And Hanks also starred in another NASA-supported film, Apollo 13. There was even a film made in 1964 called Robinson Crusoe on Mars. The promotional spots for the film Apollo 13 featured David Bowie's Space Oddity. And in the movie The Martian with Matt Damon, the David Bowie song Starman appears. On May 12, 2013, astronaut Chris Hadfield recorded what has been credited as the first ever music video recorded in space. And the song he chose to record, of course, was David Bowie's Space Oddity. Again and again, we see Bowie's music associated with NASA and the space program, just as Bowie constantly used Stanley Kubrick symbology all the way to the end of his days. The sheer amount of films that have been made dealing with manned Mars missions is staggering. It would take hours to even mention them all. And to see what I'm talking about, simply type "movies about Mars" into a search engine and see for yourself. One film I forgot to mention in the previous installment was Capricorn 1. And an interesting connection is that David Bowie himself was a zodiac sign Capricorn. This film from 1977 features many well-known actors such as Elliot Gould, James Brolin, Hal Holbrook, Telly Savalas, and strangely even, O.J. Simpson. This film is another great example of Hollywood films fictionalizing real events in order to further the narrative that these things are simply myth or conspiracy theory. Be sure to check out my coming full-length film, The Spellcasters, for information on the true controllers of Hollywood. In Capricorn 1, a manned Mars mission is called off at the last minute because of a malfunction that would have killed the crew live on TV. So the astronauts are whisked away while the public watches the empty rocket launch, believing everything is going as planned. The astronauts are then told they must help NASA fake the mission, or else their families will be harmed. Everyone in the know about the mission is then systematically eliminated in order to keep the truth from reaching the public. This poster was commissioned by George Bush Sr. around 1985 for his space exploration initiative that proposed a joint effort with the Boeing Aerospace Company. It depicts astronauts standing in front of a stone monolith that looks very similar to Sumerian ruins on Earth. which is fascinating since the cradle of civilization in what is now Iraq was once called Cydonia, and it lies on the 33rd degree parallel on Earth. Pyramid structures and the alleged face on Mars also lie on the 33rd degree parallel on Mars, and this area of the planet is also known as Cydonia. According to the artist, the poster was scrapped due to government officials not liking the idea of suggesting that there was once intelligent life on Mars. The artist also strangely admits that there are Masonic symbols encoded into the artwork, yet claims that they were put there by accident. These were never supposed to see the light of day, but thanks to the internet, we have another huge clue regarding the monolith and manned Mars missions. In the 2012 film John Carter, taken from source material by Edgar Rice Burroughs titled John Carter of Mars, the title character is transported from the Civil War era to Mars, where a planet-wide war is ensuing. This film is packed to the gills with Egyptian, Sumerian, and Anunnaki symbology, and features shapeshifters, giants, reptilians, and a race of aliens that very much resemble the Watchers described in ancient religious texts. In the film, John Carter is transported from Earth by a device in an ancient cave which has Sumerian cuneiform writing on the device itself. Then I came across a piece of info that sealed the whole deal for me once again. The set designer on the film John Carter was none other than Nathan Crowley, relative of Aleister Crowley, who worked on many Christopher Nolan films that we discussed in the previous movie. Ladies and gentlemen, we are officially down the rabbit hole now. In the previous Bowie Black Star film, we discussed the connection and symbology of the number 69. And in closing, I'd like to mention one last thing. The 69th day of 2016 is March 9th. On that day, Earth will experience a total solar eclipse. And for around 4 minutes or so, the black star will appear. There is so much more to be learned on these topics and much more to be discovered. And as always, I encourage the viewer to do your own work and research on these topics, as there's always so much more to the story than myself or anyone else could ever fit into one film.